Hello, everyone. As Christine mentioned, my name is Nate Simpson.
And I'm LaQuesha Foster.
And we are going to go ahead and get started. I realize that we are the last thing for you all to go home. So it's always exciting to be the person at the end. It's just like running a race. If anybody watches track, we're just the anchor. So we're just going to push everyone over to the end and have a great time and win first place. So what we're going to do today, we won't really take that long, but we figured because of the fact that we're here to talk about early college, high school handbooks and reference guides, right? Well, we wanted to take you all through some things that we have learned in the process of developing our early college, high school handbook, so that you can avoid or learn or grow from some of the things that we've learned. So with that, do you want to talk about
how we got here?
Yep.
So the way we got here was initially there wasn't a Nate. There was just a me. And I had dual credit in ECHS. And I know a lot of you are in that situation, and it was hectic. And I was running 2 programs. So when Nate appeared, like a godsend, I was ready to figure out what had been our best practices for each other. Because I was literally transferring information from myself to Nate. For this particular group of students. So we had to figure out what was going to work best, but we also needed not necessarily rules, but our best practices so that we could move forward and function. Oh, I don't work. Can you hear me now?
Okay.
And so with that, we had to figure out how do we do that. So it started off very simple, just a couple of lists here and there, and then it began to develop into a manual. So these are our top 10 things.
So so it's kind of similar to if you watched Dave Letterman way back in the day. So it's like the same concept, top 10 items, and we hope that you can, and we'll pretty much be talking about each item and then going into detail a little bit. So you see the top 10 items that we've discovered when we went through this process. So the first thing is, it's for a reference and not the solution. So basically what that means, when we were going through this process of developing the early college high school handbook, our goal was that we wanted this handbook to be the be-all, end-all when it comes to early college high school and how Eastfield is going to do it with our early college high school partnerships and just be able to document it, right? But I think what we discovered as we were developing it as a group, we realized that it was never going to be the answer to what we needed to develop when we're doing partnerships with our early college high schools. It was never going to be the answers to everything. Because you all probably have experienced it. There's some things that we just discover as you go, and we realize, if we want to get something completed, we will never be able to get everything written down, and keep that in mind. So like I said, the biggest thing is we've learned in the process of developing a handbook, you should always keep in mind that whatever you're going to come up with is going to be your reference. It's going to be if, for example, myself or somebody else has to come in, or you have someone else who wants to start a partnership with you, or you want to continue to talk about what's going to be done or how do you do things. That's the purpose of the handbook. It's designed to help you have a place of reference so you can remember some things. Does that make sense? Okay. Next one.
Our guide really doesn't speak to the MOU. So I know most times when you think about a reference guide or you think about your manual, you're thinking, this should be everything that my MOU is. Well, the reality is that your MOU doesn't cover everyday life when you have an ECHS. So you have to kind of think through what's most important, right? So an example that I'll give you is what we thought would be most important was instruction and credentialing. That's not necessarily covered in great detail in your MOU.
Or nor do you want it in there.
Yeah, it just mentions instruction.
Right,
kind of way.
right.
But in that, the thought was, let me tell you how to do credentialing. Let me tell you what my role is as the person who's going to facilitate that process, and then this is what your role is in order to make it happen. So that was really how it came about. We really had to step away from the MOU because at first it was, we want to cover everything in the MOU.
Throw the whole kitchen sink in there. Just put everything in there.
If you remember nothing else that I said, one day we wanted to stop writing. The MOU would not allow us to stop writing if we wrote to that. So again, it was to get back to what is practical and what is our reality.
And the other part about the MOU and ILA, if many of you have worked on this before, you should know that the purpose of the ILA and MOU is for stuff that needs to be about how the partnership is going to work on paper, right? But you can't get yourself into a place where you write the agreement in such a way that is locking you in to not being able to do certain things. So you have to, at some point, leave some things that are broad enough so that when things happen or as you're doing the partnership, there's space for a handbook or a reference guide to be developed. Does that make sense? So that's the biggest thing that we remember when we were doing this, like, you know, should we really write this in the sense that there's so much stuff that we want to put in the ILA? No, we probably should take some of that stuff that we would like in the ILA and put it in the handbook, because there's some stuff that changes, and normally the ILAs are going to be longer, are going to last for at least a year. So really sticking with the handbook allows you to have some wiggle room to make sure that it's not the same. Plus, you don't want it to overlap where there's some things that don't make any sense or contradict. So the next one was to balance specifics with being broad. So this is actually connected to the previous one. We, again, like we said, we learned if we put way too much in the handbook, it will never get finished. And plus things change, or there's a new regulation for the coordinating board, or there's a new procedure, or we have a new thing that we have to do on the college side. So we learned that the best thing in order for you to have a handbook is to have something that is specific but is broad enough so that there's space for you to continue to do things that you need to do to make sure that the program is successful. So that's why we really realized that when you develop it, you want to have as much as you can in it, but you don't want to write it in a place where there's no space for you to actually figure it out or know how to do it. It's really, again, a reference, things to consider.
It allows you to be flexible. So when you allow yourself to balance it, when a crisis happens, because it does, or Tuesday, then you are prepared to deal with Tuesday because you've allowed yourself enough flexibility to say, this is the dilemma, this is what my manual says, there are some other factors that kind of play into this is the solution that we've come up with, and it still meets the needs or what our manual has said that we would do as a college or as the ECHS.
Oops.
We say always use the word recommend. With that, there are going to be some things you can recommend. There are going to be some things that you just can't recommend them because we must do them. So really choosing when is the best place to say recommend. When is the best time to say we recommend that you do this because this is a best practice. Or we recommend that you do this because of this. Because what we're trying to do is say, you know what, we tried this yesterday, it didn't work, we shouldn't do this again. We know you want to try it, but we recommend that you don't. That's the sense of it. So what you want to do is figure out how to recommend it, but also have that context that you can give an individual to say, this really didn't work for us. We tried it 6 months ago, this was the result of it. We could do it again, but we need to know how to tweak it. So this is why we're recommending this, because we've kind of sort of been down this path before.
And the good part about it is it gives us a chance, because again, it's a partnership between two organizations, right? As much as we would love for our partner to do exactly what we want them to do on both sides between the ISD and the college, we know that there are some additional details internally that maybe some stuff that we would like to do can't be done or can't be done to fidelity. So as a result, when you write it so you can still use it, or it doesn't become redundant, it's considered as a recommendation. Again, it's just a starting point. It's a recommended approach to do this, or this is recommended, or this is considered when you have to look back or use it as a place to talk to someone else about someone who's new or something they didn't think about. It's an opportunity to make sure that you use that word as much as possible, because it's always a recommendation. So this goes back to how we had to go about developing it, right? So document everything if possible. And this is why I'm saying that, because a lot of the times when we had to develop it, the question is, well, what do we already have that's already written down? And if there's nothing written down to learn from what was done in the past, then we can't really make a handbook that's going to be very useful. It's going to be a handbook that's going to repeat the same mistakes. Does that make sense? So the reason what we've learned is to pull out, I know there's emails, I know there is notebook paper, I know there's napkins, there's Post-its, there are little pieces of paper that you found in your car. I mean, whatever you have that's documented is good, because then you can start from there. And then to understand, well, when I have to make this handbook and it's not very specific, but it's broad enough, it's from a point of what we've learned as we did this. Does that make sense? So it's always important to at least try to get the documents to be able to document it moving forward, so that you don't document something that doesn't work.
Also, document the bad. I know most people wouldn't tell you that, but the bad places are really where you learn the most. So, I mean, I wouldn't use any names, but document the bad. Because the bad will put you on a path to become better. Because when you're writing it down, and that's one of the things that we really learned, when we wrote down the bad, we learned probably why we shouldn't do this, because we were processing it. And we were processing it from a place of we weren't in it. We were now removed from it, and we could really take the time to think through what should have been next steps, what should have been our best practices. Maybe we shouldn't have said this. Maybe we should have actually done 1, 2, and 3 instead of X, Y, and Z, and that maybe would have worked a little better for the high school and for us. But I think that in writing down the bad, we really learned what could be better. So when you write down everything, even though you don't want to, remember to write down your bad. It's okay.
It's a great reference of what not to do. If it starts looking like this, go the other way.
You're going to centralize your approved policies. So what's going to happen, and what happened for us, was that we were able to really say, as a college, this is what we do. And that part was really great, because there were some things we didn't know what the college did, because it had never come up in conversation. So one of the issues that we had to work through was, what do you do if you need to remove an instructor who is teaching a course? Well, on the college level, you just stop giving them classes. You can't do that at a high school, because they still get classes. So how does that work? What is the process to take them through that? So as a college, we learned, and as a district, there really wasn't anything to speak to that. Because I am a dual credit instructor. I teach at this high school every day as a high school instructor. I've been credentialed. I will teach until I retire, I move away, I die, get a dog, whatever the case may be. With that, though, we needed something in place, because what happens when you have an instructor who has never done well on the evaluation, has never met with their faculty person, has never gone through training? You shouldn't keep that person, because it's not beneficial to you, it's not beneficial to the high school. So in that, we learned to pull all of the resources together to say, this is what the process looks like. So if you are a brand new instructor, you go through a training with us, and if by chance in your first year, we've had some issues, at the end of your first year, your faculty coordinator is going to sit down and talk to you. Because as a college, we came up with a process to say that. So this allows not only the college, but also the ECHS to figure out what's missing, what happened we talked about, and what should actually be in place should something come up that we need an answer to.
So consider your best practice and keep it simple. So I know all of us love to write, and we can write for days, and we have experienced that as well. We've learned that it's best, if you do develop a handbook, just to keep it simple. You don't have to write every single comma, period, whatever happened, like to document second by second of what occurred in a certain situation. It's not necessary. If you keep it simple, it's really easy to be able to talk about it and to share with someone else, instead of having everything in a place where it's like, well, how much are you gonna, as a reader, what am I supposed to do if I keep on writing or reading and reading and it doesn't get to a point, right? So we've learned to keep it simple. to keep stuff that you really need to have in it and some stuff that you just really don't need to have in it, just to keep it simple. And to think about that you should keep whatever you have encountered as a best practice as what you've written down. So even though you want to include both the things you did well and the things you didn't do well, those are both your best practices so that they can continue and that they don't leave or lose its purpose after a while. These are things that we've learned because we know we've discovered some great things, but what can happen is suddenly if you don't look back into it or keep track of it, it'll go away.
I would also just add one other piece to that. Read your neighbors. Because that was the one thing that helped us to initially, like, because we were like the MOU, we were big thinkers, right? We wanted to fix the world with this manual. And then, you know, like a week went by and we realized we couldn't do it. So we began to look at our neighbors. We began to look at other people who had an ECHS, who had dual credit, and we were like, what do we need? So the same way that we came up with our top 10, we asked people what was their top 10. You can do the exact same thing when creating your manual. How did you get to your top 10? What is your top 10? You know what, give me your top 5. Start small, then work up to your top 10. Be objective when you're writing. When we initially started, again, we wanted to save the world, make everyone successful, have every answer, but it just wasn't realistic. Because our manual is actually shared between ECHS and dual credit. So I would write, and then Nate would read, and then he would write, and I would read. And it would be a shared document between the two of us. So that at any given time, we could go online, we could look at it, we could reference it, we could write notes to each other. We could, whatever needed to be done about that manual, it could happen right there in that document. And then as we started to get closer, we literally found ourselves just having random conversations about the manual. We could be at lunch, we could be laughing, but then, so I got to page 5 on the manual, and it's not this, and I don't agree with that. Why did you put that in? And so if we were able to justify it, and that was our sign to keep it. If we couldn't, we removed it. It was very, again, keep it simple. That's how we opted to be objective.
And I think the other part is when you eventually get to a point where it becomes external, I think that we have a tendency where if you spent, months on developing something and then you put it out there, there's going to be some feedback provided. So I just think, again, one of our things that we've learned is to be okay with the fact that what you've developed, some folks are going to have feedback on it. And just to see it as they're not talking about your baby, they're just talking about a document. It's just a piece of paper. It's okay. If something needs to be tweaked or they notice there's a comma that needs to be placed or have we thought about, just consider that as an option because again, it's not your child. It's okay. So keep that in mind. I'm giving you all a heads up. Trust me, you may have spent hours like we were talking. We might spend hours talking about that one section. Just we're going to get this right, and then you start thinking it through the feedback process, and then that whole section was just like, no, don't like it. Take it out, and you're just like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? Keep writing, do it over again.
Review what you have to see if it's relevant and if it's being completed. So like we were saying, as we were going back and forth on our process, we were reviewing it, but then we were also checking to see, do we do it? Because you can write a manual and it can be a dream document, but if you don't actually do it,
why write it down?
It is a waste of paper. And you will be angry because you will have written something that you yourself can't keep up. You cannot maintain it, you cannot do anything, and it's such a dream document that even your partner will look at you and say, this is amazing, we can't do it. So with that, you really want to think and keep in mind, are these things that we're doing and that we can continue to do? Because there was one thing that I think we initially wrote and we didn't do it. Like, we had never done it. It just sounded good because we saw it at another school and we wanted to do it too, but we never did a test drive to see if it would work. Mm-hmm. So we had to remove it. Then there were some things that we had been doing And they were so natural to us that it was like, I don't even think about doing this. It's like breathing, but it wasn't in the manual. So we had to go back and say, hey, we actually do this. Let's put that in there. And it started off choppy and ugly, and we had to go back to it and refine it. But it was really a couple of times we had to sit down and say, I do this, and I do it every day, and we do it well, and it is a best practice. And when we do it, people don't realize that we do it, but they love it. It's going in.
And I would only add also, like, again, I agree. It's no reason to put something down. Like, it's a great opportunity to do an inventory on what you actually do and to look at what you wrote down before and if you actually still do it. And to see, even if you do it, are what you're writing down still something that you still do? Like, has it gotten outdated? Is that something that we really do, or have we stopped doing that? And I think the reality is we've experienced as we were doing this writing process, there was some stuff that we were saying, yeah, this is written down, but no, we don't do that anymore. That's old. So it's definitely something as a great opportunity to look back and to review and see, am I really doing this or am I doing something else? Or are what we're doing no longer necessary and it's outdated? So yeah, it does. This is just the words of the cycle of what you're going to experience as you go through it. You're going to plan, you're going to write, you're going to revise, and you're going to repeat.
I will say the one thing that was helpful for us is that initially we were given a deadline. And at the time, this was when Nate and I were thinking really big, and we were like, we can write this in our sleep. Okay, so that deadline came, and there was no manual. There wasn't even really a table of contents. We were like, it's not as easy as we think. So to continue to do this, we had to give ourselves a realistic timeline that said, on this day, we're going to have this. And then the next time we come together to talk about this, we're going to have this. And there were some days where we had to say, I can't meet with anyone because I'm writing this. And it was hard because, as you can see, we're playful people. So we couldn't go outside for lunch. We had to work in our office or go to the faculty center, or we had to dedicate an entire Friday to it. Or that time it snowed last year and no one could go outside. Guess what Nate and I were doing? Watching Netflix and writing manuals. So with that being said, there was so much time spent on the manual doing this exact process over and over and over again that by the time we got something that felt complete, we were like, ooh, okay, on to the next task.
And I would say, I don't think we even realized how much we had to go through the process, and that I think if we had to do it over again, if we had to do it over again, I think that I would be in a better place to know that that's going to be the process, that it will be an ongoing, continuous cycle, that you will plan something, write it, you will revise it because you'll get feedback, and then you'll have to do it over again and rewrite, plan, revise, and that's just part of the process. And if you're okay with that, then getting the manual put together is what's going to be next for you. But if you're not, we're going to need you to grow into that experience and welcome it, because it's going to be real. You're going to encounter it a lot.